Campbell, that's Rajindra, hinted at what might well be the premise of his development. While speaking on the Out the Blocks podcast, the 29-year-old shared what he deems as widespread frustration in the fraternity, that the country's identity has never been leveraged to the benefit of more of their athletes.
Most of the athletes think the same way, where brand Jamaica is easily marketable, right?
Yes.
Tourism, brand Jamaica, Athlete Jamaica, everything contribute to every sort of pool you can think in the country.
Right.
Jamaica athletics and right in the middle of it.
Right.
Now, you're telling me that it is hard to get local support towards the teams. In America, there's a tier system where these athletes can medal. This athlete can possibly cause an upset. They make sure those athletes are prioritized in a sense where they have whatever resource they need to propel them a little, give them a slight edge, and make sure it's there. Now, the problem I find with the problem I've experienced, you plead, but I don't think they understand, or they choose not to understand.
Yeah, that was Rajindra Campbell speaking on the Out the Blocks podcast in October last year. We're now joined by Leighton Levy, who was one of the hosts of that podcast and also one of the lead journalists on this story at pretty much every stage. Leighton Levy, thank you so much for joining us. As I just pointed out, you've been following this story from the outset, and here we are, where we've been able to confirm Roje Stona, Rajindra Campbell, and the latest news coming in as a confirmation is that Jaden Hibbert is also in the process of switching his eligibility from Jamaica to Turkey. Talk to us, Leighton.
Yeah, we've had these names for several days now, Ricardo, as you know, and we've been discussing. The challenge was getting the confirmation from the athletes or their representatives themselves. That wasn't happening because I think, for the most part, I think a lot of the teams around these athletes were probably kept in the dark a little bit. I can surmise that based on some of the comments that I've been getting. And, of course, the fact that I think the process was not fully complete. I think the athletes were required to sign off on some of these documents before the end of the month. So facilitate the 3-year window that is now required before they can represent Turkey at the Olympics in 2028. Of course, there's still another name that we're still trying to confirm. But based on what my information is, there are 4 athletes who are likely to make that switch. And all 4 are global medalists for Jamaica in the past few years. So that's a major blow for Jamaica's track and field in many ways, because one, it suggests that what is happening in Jamaica in terms of how our athletes are supported is not adequate enough to have the athletes feel like they're being respected, or they're just being supported in many ways. As you heard in that podcast that we had last year with Rajindra Campbell, what he reflected is a common thread among a number of the athletes, especially field event athletes, who have expressed, varying levels of frustration about not getting the support that they need to get to feel like they're part of the dynamic of what Jamaica track and field is. So these events that are unfolding now, while not much of a surprise, are kind of disturbing in many ways, because look, there are a lot of Jamaicans who feel like the athletes are being disloyal, and we can understand that the loyalty to the flag is something that's significant for our sportsmen and women. But on the other side, which is a more difficult side to accept, is the fact that these athletes need the support. If you are going to spend an entire career and then retire with virtually nothing, and then pretty much left on your own, why would you not take up an offer like the one that Turkey, and I'm sure other countries will eventually get to doing? Because what this does, it opens the door now for other countries to see what's possible with Jamaica's athletes, who are renowned for being the best in the world. And so the door is now open, and as you alluded to at the outset, other athletes had made a request for the switch as well. So it means that there's a thinking among our athletes that maybe there's greener pastures elsewhere, because it's certainly not green in Jamaica.
Yeah, Leighton Levy, you said something earlier that based on what you have gleaned, that this was largely kept from support staff. Am I to take that to mean managers, agents, even coaches might not have known about some of the moves?
Yeah, well, a couple of the representatives that I spoke with, especially on Sunday, were not aware of what was transpiring. Some were vaguely aware that something might be happening, but generally, you got the sense that they were in the dark to some degree about what was unfolding, because these deals, as far as they're being made to understand, were negotiated by people outside of the management structure of some of these athletes. So, it stands to reason, and given the circumstances, why they would probably want to keep it close to their chests before the news eventually became public.
Yeah, Lytton, can you give us an idea of the type of money that we are talking about, the type of financial resources that will become available to these athletes who are switching to Turkey?
So what we are hearing is that there's a $500,000 sign-on bonus, basically, and there's a monthly stipend somewhere between $10,000 and $30,000 a month. I think that's probably
minimum 5,000.
Yeah, from athlete to athlete.
Sorry,
right?
minimum 500,000 sign-on.
Yeah, sign-on bonus, right? And then I did some checking myself today. A gold medal for Turkey earns you 531,000 US dollars. A silver medal, 311,000. A bronze, I think, 120, or something, just over $100,000 for a bronze medal. Those kind of financial rewards, Ricardo, is something that Jamaica is unwilling, not really unwilling, but certainly unable to be able to match in terms of what these athletes are able to earn for their accomplishments. So it's very attractive. And as I said to someone, and someone said to me, funny enough, just a day ago, is that if you're a doctor or a nurse or a teacher or whatever it is that your profession is, and you're earning titans compared to what is being offered to you elsewhere in another country, in another location, whether it's the Caribbean or the United States or the UK, we see hundreds of nurses every year migrate to the United States, migrate to the UK for better opportunities, better salaries, better compensation. They jump at those opportunities. I don't think the situation is different for the athletes at all. They are professionals, and if you can get a better financial reward elsewhere, then they will take it up. But I understand the loyalty. Well, a lot of Jamaicans are upset. I had a conversation with a friend of mine in the United States just earlier this evening, and he was livid, and understandably so, yes. But at the end of the day, I think these days athletes are a little bit more pragmatic than they've been before, and loyalty only goes so far. We've seen a number of athletes retire in poverty, abject poverty in many ways, and they've passed, and then there are collections made to be able to put them to rest. I don't think these athletes these days are willing to do that. So they're willing to feather their nests while they're able to. And I think this is what they're seeing now.
Yeah, Leighton Evening, just to add to the point that you made about how much you will earn for winning a gold medal or a silver or a bronze medal for Turkey. Just to go back to last year when there was financial incentives for the Jamaican athletes who medaled at the Olympic Games, a gold medal got a Jamaican 3 million Jamaican dollars, which is just approximately 19,000 US dollars. So it pales in comparison to even the sign-up figure, the minimum sign-up figure that we're hearing, which is $500,000 US dollars.
Yep, absolutely. So it's chalk to cheese. Huh? So if I'm a thinking man and I'm looking to be able to ensure that my family, myself and my family are taken care of when I eventually retire. And as you know, with athletes, retirement may come any day because you can blow a knee out, you can have a terrible hamstring injury, you can have any kind of physical injury that will end your career in an instant. So they have to make the necessary steps to ensure that they have something to fall back on should that happen. And as I said before, I understand why some people are upset because you're accustomed to watching Herb McKinley, the Quarries, the Merlin Natties run for Jamaica for years, making tremendous sacrifice to bring us joy, give us a sense of pride. But at the same time, on the other side of this thing, the realities are this is today's world of sport. Sport is business. And, loyalty kind of takes a backseat to that in many instances.
Leighton, do you have any idea as to how long the process would have taken for them to try and woo these Jamaican athletes? And can you paint the picture as to what exactly Turkey gets out of this?
Well, Turkey gets Olympic medalists and gets proper credence when it comes to global championships. When you go to Olympics or World Championships, how many times do you hear Turkey's name mentioned for a medal in anything track and field? You hardly ever hear anything.
But isn't that an illusion, though, that Turkey is buying? Because everyone would know a Rajindra and a Roje. They would have represented Jamaica. So isn't it almost like a fallacy what they're trying to purchase?
I really don't. People have short memories. Do you know that Salwa Adnasir was Nigerian? No, she connects with Bahrain now because he won the World Championships for Bahrain in the third fastest time ever run in the 400 meters for women. Memories are short, and people remember what you do. They're afraid, what have you done for me lately? And that's how track and field is. Nobody cares what you did 5 years ago or 2 years ago. They care what you're doing now, and in LA 2028. But Turkey just got 4 potential medalists.
So Leighton, are you saying that people remember Merlin Ottey based on what she did for Slovenia, not for Jamaica then?
No, what did Merlin do for Slovenia?
Not much.
There you go. So if these guys were younger, Jaden is 20, Roje is what, 24. These are young guys, so they still have the best part of their careers ahead of them. When Merlin went to Slovenia, Merlin was near 40 years old. The reality is that she may have gotten to the Olympic final at 40, but did she win a medal? No. The fact is that back then, Merlin, to use that term, defection to Slovenia was more a personal decision rather than being recruited by Slovenia. This is a situation where the athletes are looking at an opportunity. Turkey is seeing an opportunity and a potential. And therefore, it's a fair trade as far as they're concerned. These athletes get financial rewards, and they get the opportunity of displaying this talent as their talent on the world stage.
Yeah, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us to have this discussion, and I'm sure we'll continue to track this development and talk some more. All right, let's now turn to renowned sports lawyer Paul Green, who will lend his expertise on legal aspects of this development. Mr. Green, good afternoon. Welcome to the SportsMax Zone. It is such a pleasure to have you. You know, one of the first questions, or one of the popular questions I've gotten today is, how is it so easy for athletes who represented one country just last year, maybe in some instances even earlier this year at the World Indoor Championships, to just switch allegiance like that and belong to another country? Is it really that easy based on your understanding of the regulations governing the transfer of allegiance with World Athletics?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's always an honor to be on with you guys. And, it makes me a little bit sad because I love Jamaica, and the athletes in Jamaica always inspire me. As far as your question, it isn't that easy. Turkey can give anyone a passport, but they still have to go through a process with World Athletics, a transfer of allegiance process, and there's a panel at World Athletics that will have to approve the transfer. There's also a waiting period that's a minimum of 3 years. So these guys are going to wait for a long time before they can compete. I suppose the idea here is to get this done before they can come back and compete in the Olympics in 2028. But it has to still be approved by World Athletics and also by the IOC under the Olympic Charter. So there'll have to be World Athletics approval and Olympics approval. Nothing is automatic, and there is a process that if somebody gets denied an application, they can appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. But nobody should think this is easy, because it isn't.
Do you have an understanding of for what reason or reasons that the World Athletics panel or at the Olympic level would deny applications of this kind?
The rules talk about the requirement to have a connection to the country, and you can have that connection after you're already given citizenship. So over the next 3 years, they can develop a link to the country. If someone wants to look back at a recent example of somewhere that this has happened, a lot of Kenyans have transferred. There have been multiple Kenyans that transferred to Romania in the last year. there was also a number of Kenyans that transferred to Kazakhstan. And those transfers ultimately did go through. But I expect that all these athletes are going to have some connection to the country, maybe have to move there for part of the year to show that they're truly, beyond just having a passport, connected to the country of Turkey.
Yeah, interesting, because I was reading through the regulations, and you are right, it speaks to genuine, close, and established link to the new country. Based on your understanding of the process, a final decision from the World Athletics panel, is that to be made, let's say, in the coming weeks, or is that going to be made in the coming years?
I would expect sometime this year that application would be made. The Turkish Federation has to make that application to World Athletics and notify the Jamaican Federation. That's how that process works. As far as how long it will take, I'm not sure I know. I mean, that panel doesn't seem to have any sort of deadline. When they're good and ready, they'll make a decision. And then if it gets approved, it gets approved. If it doesn't get approved, then they'll have to go to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, each of the athletes, and then appeal that decision. So it's a process that I don't think will be resolved right away. This will take some time.
Yeah, from the Jamaica Athletics Administrative Association standpoint, is there anything they can do to prevent the transfers from going through?
Well, if they were cooperative, they could even potentially waive the 3-year period. I've had cases where that 3-year period can get waived, and if people are interested, they can go on the World Athletics website. There's a list of the transfers of allegiance, and there have been cases even this year where athletes have been declared immediately eligible to represent their other country without having to wait the 3 years. So there's two issues here. There's a 3-year wait period for World Athletics competitions, and then there's a wait period under the Olympic Charter for the Olympics. That's not really an issue because it will be more than 3 years since any of them last competed in an Olympic Games for Jamaica. So they'll be able to compete in the Olympics. The issue will become World Athletics, and if they can compete maybe sooner, and they could potentially put a case and maybe compete for 2027. I mean, there's an opportunity to do that under the rules.
Yeah, Paul, this story has a frenetic feel about it, and as Ricardo had said at the top of the show, there is evidence that more names could pop up. I want to ask you this question because different world governing bodies may have different allegiance switching regulations. And I say that because there is a feeling in some quarters that this feels a little bit indecent, for the want of a better word. And the fact is, it feels as if it's something that could become prolific and even be abused. I know that the International Basketball Federation, because this story came up in recent months when Jamaica is trying to get a lot of NBA players who were born in the USA to represent Jamaica. But the FIBA rules will not allow wholesale switching of allegiance in that way. They have pretty much said that if you haven't done it by the time you're 16 years old, then the country is only allowed one naturalized player per national team. And I'm wondering if this thing becomes at a level that people begin to feel it's being abused, would World Athletics probably make their allegiance rules a little bit more stringent?
Well, the process right now it's not an automatic rubber stamp. So there's already a process in place with an independent panel that will have to review each of these applications. It's a good question in terms of whether or not World Athletics will revisit this rule. The rule came out a couple of years ago. So the rule's been in place for several cycles of this already. And as I said, the Kazakhstan Federation had a number of Kenyans transfer about 3 years ago, including several world champions. So this isn't the first time this has happened. I don't know what World Athletics' ultimate position might be on this, but look, at the end of the day, if they have to sit out 3 years, that's a significant period of sitting out. And you should be allowed, if you want to change countries, in my view, you should be allowed to do it. It shouldn't be restricting you from forever being able to do something like this.
Yeah, so you're suggesting then that you don't like the FIBA guidelines then about just one naturalized per team?
I mean, I think that's pretty restrictive. I mean, basketball is a different sport. So I'm not saying that doesn't work for basketball, but I think that sort of a rule would really not work well for track and field or swimming, which are different sports. So I think each individual country has to take their, I mean, each individual sport has to take their own view of this country transfer. The IOC rule is similar to the World Athletics rule, for whatever that's worth. They do have this red shirt period of 3 years. The IOC does have an opportunity to apply for a waiver of that period if it's going to be a situation where the 3 year wait period, like let's say if they did this next year, then they would have to sit out in Olympics unless they got a reduction in that period. So it seems like this has all been in the works so that they can apply in advance so that they have this 3 year wait period secured before the Olympic Games.
Yeah, Paul, I remember in 2018 when amendments were first made to the transfer of allegiance regulations because President of World Athletics, Sebastian Coe, had actually frozen at the time any transfers before the adjustments were made. And when that freezing period ended and these regulations, a lot of it was about one, keeping the credibility of international championship competition, but the other aspect of it as well was about protecting the athletes who are also transferred from one country to another. And it appears to me that a lot of those amendments were more about protecting the athletes. In this case, it would be the Jamaican athletes, and you've referenced other cases. What's your take on that aspect of the 2018 amendments?
I'm not sure if these rules specifically protect the athletes. I mean, to just read a little bit from the rule, which I have in front of me, they're talking about how these rules are to protect the credibility and regularity of international competition by ensuring athletes have a genuine connection with the country or territory and do not switch abruptly or frequently to other national representative teams for purely mercenary reasons. That language doesn't really have any meaning beyond it being sort of in the introduction. But I mean, I see this as, look, they want to maintain credibility. They don't want people to be able to easily switch from one country to another. And at the same time, they want people to have a connection. But I don't think the rules are necessarily there. I suppose you could say that an athlete could be rooked into a situation where they, went into this and then ultimately regretted it later. But, there is an opportunity for them to actually have a mediator and an ombudsperson assigned to some of these younger athletes to explain to them what they're doing. So maybe that's the part that you're referencing.
Yeah, I'm going to read the part that I'm referencing. It's 1.2.4, which says to ensure that the welfare of an athlete who transfers allegiance from one member to another is adequately protected at all stages, including ensuring that the member to which the athlete transfers fulfills any promises, offers, or incentives, that's i.e. payments, other consideration or value in kind, or other benefits that it may to the athlete to induce them to choose the member or transfer their allegiance to the member, and that the athlete's rights, privileges, and benefits associated with their citizenship or official legal status, i.e. if an athlete has refugee or asylum status, are provided, met, upheld, and respected. And the last one, that principles of human rights associated with the athlete's citizenship or other legal status are provided, met, upheld, and respected. For example, freedom of movement, freedom of opinion and expression, right to equal treatment and protection, etc.
Well, certainly you're right. That rule is there to ensure, let's say in this case, that Turkey comes through on what it's promising. I mean, it would be the worst of all situations for these athletes if Turkey made all these promises and then they don't actually come through. So the point of that rule is to say the member federation, when you make this application, you're going to have to tell us exactly what you're paying these people, and you're going to have to pay them. You're not going to be able to promise them something in terms of citizenship, monthly stipends, or all the amounts of money you were talking about if you don't actually do it. So yes, World Athletics will hold the Turkish Federation to whatever they're promising these athletes. There's also a part in there that I referenced, 215.2, which talks about appointing an independent ombudsman to assist the athlete to understand and address the requirements of the regulations. So they're trying to make sure that athletes are properly educated about what this exactly means. And if you're a young athlete and you've grown up on a certain place your whole life, it's a big deal to switch countries.
Yeah, fair enough. Paul Green, such a pleasure having you on the SportsMax Zone. We thank you so much for your insight. Appreciate it greatly.
Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it. Have a good night.
Yeah, Paul Green, renowned sports lawyer, has in a few anti-doping cases defended quite well a few Jamaicans, and quite versed as well on matters of switching allegiance, Donald.
Yeah, we have our first response from a government official, and it has come from Juliet Cuthbert-Flynn. Of course, she's a five-time Olympian and double Olympic silver medalist. She tweeted in the last hour, if we continue to do the same old, and expect anything different, we are a set of fools. A shake-up of that tree is needed. I have heard so many horrible words from the mouths of Jamaicans when our athletes underperformed for whatever reasons. You don't know what athletes endure. Fix the problem. We can be the worst nightmare for our own. I say go forth and conquer.
Yeah, and of course, Juliet Cuthbert-Flynn, 1992 double Olympic silver medalist at 100 and 200 meters. She is now a member of parliament in Jamaica, part of the ruling Jamaica Labour Party, and also
specifically State Minister in the Ministry of Security, not sport.
Yeah. And by the way, Donald and Lance, in the last half an hour, Jaden Hibbert, who is the latest name to be confirmed, that the process is to be completed, I gather, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, did post on social media. What do you call this, Donald? Well, it's a TikTok video.
It's a video
that he posted, and the video said, "Time to go." I'm not sure how much we are to read into that, but I guess you can do your own reading because, of course, we have now confirmed that he is among those processing his documents to become a Turkish citizen and ultimately represent that country in international competition. This is a stunning development, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, and we're here on the SportsMax Zone to track it for you all the way. 3 names are confirmed, but guess what? You just don't know what's going to happen going forward. As I said earlier, there have even been Jamaicans who have approached the Turkish officials and have been turned down. The Turkish officials have approached athletes who are based in Jamaica. It's not just athletes who are based in the United States of America, and a few of them did say no. But hey, guess what? You just never know. We've got to go to a break. So much more to come on the SportsMax Zone, and in the coming days, we'll